I didn't know what I went through God was going to use for his glory until I read Romans 8:28, of course. But I still didn't know how God was going to do it. And so this leads me to 1 Kings 11. I'm going to read a few scriptures, talk about it, and then I'll eventually get to my testimony and how I got here. So first, it starts off by saying, now King Solomon loved many foreign women. Besides Pharaoh's daughter, he married women from Moab, Ammon, Edom, Sidon, and from among the Hittites. The Lord had clearly instructed the people of Israel, you must not marry them, because they will turn your hearts to their gods. Yet Solomon insisted on loving them anyway. He had 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines, and in fact, they did turn his heart away from the Lord. In Solomon's old age, they turned his heart to worship other gods instead of being completely faithful to the Lord his God, as his father David had been. Solomon worshipped Ashtoreth, I think is how you say it, the goddess of the Sidonians, and Molech, the detestable god of the Ammonites. In this way, Solomon did what was evil in the Lord's sight. He refused to follow the Lord completely, as his father David had done. Okay, I'm going to pause right there because what I've read so far, this is clearly showing how Solomon disobeyed God by first marrying these women, because God set these commands for the Israelites. And so we know this is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God's covenant blessings were passed from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob because God is faithful to his promises. Jacob, his name was eventually turned into Israel, and that's how we got the Israelites. So Solomon comes from this line, and he commanded the Israelites not to do this. And so Solomon blatantly disrespected the commands that God laid out, and he did it anyway, marrying, it says 700 wives and had 300 concubines. That is not at all abiding to the covenant that God had with Abraham initially, right? So he basically worshiped these gods because his wives were worshiping these gods. So I'm going to read a few more scriptures, and then it'll make a little more sense. So it says, verse 7, on the Mount of Olives, east of Jerusalem, he even built a pagan shrine for Chemosh, the detestable god of Moab, and another for Molech, the detestable god of the Ammonites. Solomon built such shrines for all his foreign wives to use for burning incense and sacrificing to their gods. The Lord was very angry with Solomon, for his heart had turned away from the Lord, the God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice. He had warned Solomon specifically about worshiping other gods, but Solomon did not listen to the Lord's command. So now the Lord said to him, since you have not kept my covenant and have disobeyed my decrees, I will surely tear the kingdom away from you and give it to one of your servants. But for the sake of your father David, I will not do this while you are still alive. I will take the kingdom away from your son. And even so, I will not take away the entire kingdom. I will let him be king of one tribe for the sake of my servant David and for the sake of Jerusalem, my chosen city. So that was a lot. First of all, I took some notes, and so I want to touch on the pagan shrine that he built for his wives. Like I said, so Solomon already worshiped God. It literally said that God appeared to him twice. So if you have this relationship with God, but then you basically compromise your relationship or what you believe in to be true or what you know to be true when you get in connection with someone else or other people who are doing something completely different. Okay, so a pagan is someone who worships gods other than the God worshipped by the Israelites. Someone who is just not religious, or maybe not using the term religious, but doesn't have a relationship with God, or someone who is polytheistic, I think is how you say it, where they have multiple gods. So what I want to say about that is sometimes God could actually be trying to pull you away from the environment or pull you away from the people who are negatively influencing you, just so that he can He can speak to you. He can get your attention enough to where you, his chosen one, he can actually lead to what it is he's trying to use you for in this lifetime, or what it is he's trying to do in your life. Okay, so we know that King David was Solomon's dad, and he had favor with God because he was completely faithful. But Solomon, however, although he has a relationship with God, because he engaged in these acts with basically disobeying God's decrees, now God is saying that he's going to take the kingdom away from him. And then he's going to take it away from his son as well. But because he respects David enough, he's not going to take it all away. However, this relates to basically the things that we do can affect the next generation. And so it can basically engaging in what God said was evil, what God said not to do, it disconnects you from God's blessing. So when you disconnect from it, or when Solomon disconnected from it, that means generations after him, those who follow him, are not going to be able to receive that blessing that Solomon could have received from God. Okay, so now let's go to the next couple of verses that I'm going to read, and this will be it. So it says, "Then the Lord raised up Hadad the Edomite, a member of Edom's royal family, to be Solomon's adversary. Sorry, I always say that word wrong. Years before David had defeated Edom, Joab, his army commander, had stayed to bury some of the Israelite soldiers who had died in battle. While there, they killed every male in Edom. Joab and the army of Israel had stayed there for 6 months, killing them. But Hadad and a few of his family's royal officials escaped and headed for Egypt. Hadad was just a boy at the time." Okay, so that's all I'm reading today, and I just wanted to explain and put it all together. Basically, because of Solomon's track record, because of what he tied himself up with, God already knew this was going to happen. But because of that, this is what led to life or death for him, which ultimately it ends in death, because if you continue to read the chapter, you'll see that Solomon died at the end. But it says here that the Lord raised up Hadad the Edomite. And I ended with saying that Hadad was just a boy at the time, because when Hadad was a boy and Solomon's dad, David, defeated Edom, that drove them away from their home and what they knew. Hadad is who I'm speaking about. And so Hadad pretty much remembers that. And so as he grew up and God was raising him up, which is what it says in verse 14, he knew that Hadad was basically still going to have some type of beef towards the bloodline, or towards whoever was still living from who drove them out of their hometown. Okay, trying to make this make sense. Hopefully it is. And so I said all that to say God can use the enemy for his purpose too. He knew exactly what Solomon was going to do, and he knew that Hadad was being raised up with this hurt inside his heart, or with this anger and this bitterness still bearing inside of him, right? And so I'm not reading the rest of chapter 11, but you can go read your Bible, okay? But you'll basically see that God used Hadad and others to get to Solomon, because Solomon and his choices or his decisions, which were against God's decrees or commands, led him to a life of death. And the reason why I say that is because God controls the outcomes of every event. He warned Solomon several times, and he didn't want to listen. So, of course, it says here, God got angry. And God is a just God. God is a God who wants the best for you. But he created us. So he obviously has these rules, just as parents do. Just do this, and I will give you everything that I have already set in writing for you. At the beginning of time, God gave us abundance. God gave us everything at our fingertips that we needed. And so when you go out here and you search for something outside of God, then you're not going to be able to receive the things that God has for you. So I said all that to say, I think it's time for my testimony. So I used to seek and idolize tarot, horoscopes, angel numbers, crystals, mediums, zodiac signs, natal charts. Um, I think I even involved myself in some mediums who did rituals or spells or candle work, because I wanted things to come in faster. And I didn't know at this time that these things were evil. I didn't know that they were forbidden. I didn't know that they were against what God had set in stone in place for his children, because I didn't have a relationship with him. And so when I eventually got into my relationship, or the early stages of my relationship with God, I started to feel shame. Like, why did I go through that? Why did that have to happen to me? Because I remember I would be around people and they would be like, oh, that's evil. Or, I told somebody in church one time when I first started going to church, because I'm fairly new to it, that I had engaged in those practices. And the way she looked at me, I'm like, girl, a sin is a sin and they equal, okay? So don't try to make it seem like I did something completely terrible when I know you probably done something that's just as bad, okay? I didn't know her life, but at the same time, God sees everything and he knows everything. I wasn't sitting here judging her. She didn't have to sit here judging me, and I'm not judging you, okay? You might still be in it, but God is trying to get through to you and get you out of it, because he will use it for your good and his glory. So back to what I was saying. God took me out of that environment, and now he's using me to come back into the environment for his glory, right? Because he's trying to get through to his people. He's trying to get me to speak to you in a way in which you may understand. So hopefully this is resonating with some of you. I'm just a mouthpiece and a vessel for the Lord, okay? So whether I just reach one person today or I reach 10, it does not matter to me. God is just using me, and he has sent me back here on social media to reach his people all over the world, okay? So if you're seeking direction, peace, you're looking for your identity, you have a lack of hope, you're looking for certainty, you're looking for stability, security, you have this sense of control, or you're just trying to get some quick answers, okay? God is trying to get through to you. He's trying to heal your heart from whatever it is that you've gone through, what you went through in your childhood, what you are currently going through. He's trying to help you, but all you have to do is probably pause, read your Bible, let him guide you, and he will lead you to what you're supposed to be doing in this life, who you're supposed to be helping, what job you're supposed to have. It's literally easy when you just surrender, let go, and let God, as people say, right? The journey might feel hard at first when you're walking with God, only because you're still operating in your own strength. You're still trying to do things your own way. But when you get into a familiar routine of coming to God, asking him things, and paying attention, because God can speak in many ways, you will eventually get this rhythm and this routine with God. You will know how he speaks to you. You will know what he's saying, and he will literally guide you throughout this life. That's what I'm currently walking in, and that's just a bit of my testimony. And I just want to say that God can do it, and he will if you let him.